is a Philips PM97 scope meter, which actually became the Fluke scope meter, if my memory serves me correctly. I've got two problems. One of them is the display backlight has gone very dim, and the other one is the keyboard has become, some of the keys have become impossible to operate. Now if we have a quick look inside, we can see just that these are the two keys that are giving me the most problem. So what we're going to do is to clean up the membrane pad and the keys. We'll give them a wipe over with some isopropyl alcohol, no abrasives, because the contacts are gold plated and it's probably only a few microns thick. We don't want to damage the gold plating. I've cleaned up the buttons quite a bit, but as you can see I've still got some corrosion on those two pads, so I'll switch to using some of the blue general purpose cloth, which is probably abrasive enough just to wear those little areas. I've tried like kind of scraping them a bit with a fingernail, which is also not very abrasive, but we're still left with some coating on there, so I'm going to keep going. I've cleaned the membrane keypad target areas. You can see that the two that we're really struggling with, there is some corrosion on the surface there, but I've cleaned them up as best I can. They can't be any worse than they were because they just weren't working. The next thing is we'll switch to the membrane pad. Now you can see on the pad, if we just peel this out, there is some, it looks like maybe coffee or something's got on there. Nothing that I've done, it's always been there. So we'll give that all a clean up, and it just happens to align. If you turn that over, those align with those things on there. So we're going to give this membrane pad a good clean, both sides, make it look like new, and put that back in. It's important to mention that once you've cleaned the gold plated contact areas, don't touch them with your fingers or even the carbon membrane keypad inserts. The grease from your fingers becomes a contamination. It's got acid in, and it will attack it. It won't happen straight away, but over a period of time it will attack the metal surface. So it's important that you keep your fingers off. So I'm cleaning the membrane pad with some isopropyl alcohol. There we go. And I'm using a nice short hard bristle brush just to get in all of the spaces. And once I've loosened all of the stuff up and dissolved it away, I'm just going to pour some isopropyl alcohol in and rinse it all off. So to finally clean in between the keys, I'm using some blue cleaning cloth, just poking it in there with the aid of a nice flat steel rule. Poke that in between them and absorb any alcohol that's still left in there, and also clean anything off that's left behind. So I'll keep going and we'll come back to this when I've finished. I've got the button side of the membrane pad looking like it was produced yesterday. I'm now going to clean the other side, which is where all of the, I assume they're graphite or some other kind of material, conductive pads. I'm going to clean this up and make it also look like it was made yesterday. The membrane pad is now clean on both sides, squeaky clean both sides. But before I put it back in, I noticed that the case 2 has got some contamination on the inside. I mean, this is after years and years of wear, and it's been excellent. I mean, it's one of the best investments I've ever had in a scope. Yes, it's limited by today's technology, but 50 megahertz scope, still useful in the field, battery operated. The batteries could be lithium and be improved. No doubt there's a way of doing that. They don't last long enough, they take too long to charge, but it's still good. And the fact that it's completely isolated is incredible. I mean, you can use this on live circuitry, things that have got no ground reference. It makes life really easy and useful. So we're going to carry on and give this top part of the case a clean. Don't forget to clean on the top side too. Whilst this may not be terribly important, but whilst you're here, there's a chance to remove 35 years of grime off. And there's a final thing, I will clean the inside of the display. I don't think there's a problem with it. I just think whilst you're here, you might as well make sure it's as clean as possible. This Perspex screen has shown some sign of wear. I mean, I'd dearly love to replace it, but it's probably more trouble than it's worth to actually replace that piece. So I'm going to carry on cleaning. To clean the inside of the display and the LCD itself, I'm going to use some lens cleaning spray and a lint-free cloth and get it squeaky clean. Now I'm happy with the keypad and happy with the contacts. I'm going to put the top cover back on. I'll replace the 2 screws that were on the display. And these are 2 T9 Torx screws, I believe. Done that one up. Done that one up. Now, it may be that my display, the backlight has died because it's been so long, but there's a glimmer of hope. Somebody pointed out these capacitors going leaky over time. I may just take the one they recommended off just to see if there's some problem with the capacitance. But it's no big deal not having the backlight. It'd just be nice. It seems to have got dimmer and dimmer and dimmer and dimmer over the years, and I have the feeling that it's died. Apparently this capacitor here is one that a guy changed because it had gone defective over a period of time. In fact, his had leaked a little bit. It looks like a 10 microfarad 50 volt surface mount electrolytic. I'm going to see if I've got something similar, and if possible I'm just going to change it just to see if it makes any difference. You never know your luck. Well, you can just see where I've taken that capacitor off, and I've measured it and it's fine, but if you look at the one next to it, this is such a high powered inspection, you can see that it's this, the next capacitor down has got leakage around it, clearly on there. I can't even get the soldering on to melt solder. I suspect in this case it's 100 microfarads at 6 volts. This could be the one that's the problem. The one I took off measured fine, it's still 10 microfarads, so that's a good one. So we'll take this one off too. It's hard to actually get a look at that place. You can see that the acid from the electrolytic has actually eaten into the tracks. It definitely come from that capacitor, I think, although I may remove the other one too. It was an absolute bitch to get off, and it smells like hell with the heat from the solder. As you can see, I've cleaned up around the pad areas, and I've actually buzzed the tracking out to the pads so we haven't lost any connectivity. But it's hard to actually get the baked on electrolyte off. So I've tried the best I can and tried to sweep any debris away from the components, but there's a little bit of corrosion around the pads of the chip that's just below it. So I'm going to keep cleaning that up. As you can see, I've cleaned around the pads. I've removed the other capacitor and pre-tinned the pads ready to put some more components back on, and it's looking good. These are the capacitors that came off. There's a 10 microfarad and two 10 microfarads and 100 microfarad. I'll just drop one on the floor. The 100 microfarad doesn't read anything like 100 microfarads. It's just all over the place. The value seems to be changing as it's being tested. So we'll put the other two back on and replace the one in the middle, which is in that space just there. I didn't have a surface mount 100 microfarad 6 volt capacitor like this one, so I've got another one which is 100 microfarads at 25 volts. I'm not quite sure about the quality of the capacitor, if it's going to be good enough for this application, but it can't be any worse than what we had. And just one point to the designer of this unit, which did a superb job. I mean, the PCB is of the highest quality. The tracking and the gold plating is not been skimped. Everything looks like it was manufactured yesterday. And I doubt when whoever designed these got the longevity of these capacitors as one of his criteria. Probably designed it well in the operating ranges, and it's probably just these capacitors have let them down. over the years. I guess there's been one or two that's had problems with the display, but I don't know if I've actually cured it, so we're going to go and try it now. Disappointingly, after all of the effort with the LCD display, as I suggested, I think it's just tired over all the years. You can hear it trying, and it does kind of half operate enough if you were in total darkness, but not as bright as it would like to be. So regarding the scope, one of the things that I found was that I couldn't set the cursor data, but now I can, and that was missing. And also cursor left right wasn't moving very well. It would eventually, but the cursor data just would never operate. So now we've got the keys back, so the scope seems to be working 100%, which is great. Got my baby back on the road. Going to look at fixing the backlight. To make life easier, I've undone the LCD panel. Just pull on the tabs on there to lift it up, and then the flexible ribbon cable should just pop straight out. What I'm really after is to work out the size and exactly what the back foil looks like. Like all of my videos, it's a kind of discovery, but these little metal clips just push on. There's 3 of them all together. I've taken 2 off, and you can, just with a little bit of finger pressure and nails, just pull these. All 3 sides have now come free. I'm not quite sure how the panel comes off. There appears to be some screws, maybe, don't know. The 2 corner screws are a kind of twist and lock nylon post. You just rotate them with your screwdriver and they just push through, come out the other side. Once the screws are free, the plastic cover comes away to reveal the LCD. Now I don't know any more about this. This is new territory for me, so I'm just going to be a bit careful here. I don't want to wreck my scope meter unnecessarily. I would say this is the corner where the electroluminescent panel makes contact with high voltage, so we may have to improvise a connection onto there. At the moment this is not moving. Here is a view of the PCB. As you can see, I was correct about the electroluminescent contacts here, and there's a gazillion lines for it to make connection with. Now I'm not going to put my finger on anything to do with those connections. It looks to be very, very carefully aligned. I don't know what the chances are of me getting this back together, but we can see there's the panel there. I just need to make a quick measurement of the panel. The actual panel itself is 88 by 87. 88 in the long direction and 87 wide. Why they couldn't have made it 88 by 88, I don't know. Anyway, that's the size of it. There seems to be some kind of backing and aluminium reflection. I don't know what's involved on the other side. But that's the electroluminescent back panel. So the clips become clear. These clips are the things that keep the pressure on the LCD in contact with the contacts on the PCB, so they're essential, those 3 clips. They're easy to push on. I'm not quite sure what the function of those corner screws are. They don't seem to do an awful lot. The $6 million question now is, we're going to have any lines in the display, have we got any pixels missing? So we'll quickly pop it back together. Well, it was bound to happen, wasn't it? We've got streaks in the display. I think I'm going to have to revisit this again. Always the risk of when you change something. Okay. Well, the alignment of this is super critical. The spacing is very, very tight. That may be why we've got those corner screws. There may be some kind of adjustment so that you can get the display accurately lined up. No doubt the people who assemble these got it off to a fine art, and they do it all day long. It's dead easy. You could do it with their eyes closed. And you can see the marvel of the layout of this, whoever did this originally. So I've given the gold contacts a clean with a lint-free cloth and some isopropyl alcohol, just in case there was any dust on there, and I'm going to inspect them before I put that back together. So now I think we have the function of the two little screw type cams, which I think will adjust the left to right. As you turn them, it's actually positioning the display left to right on those very fine connectors. At the moment I've aligned it so that the display is just 50-50, so that, you know, the actual alignment, I guess we may have to plug it in and then adjust them to get it exactly right. I don't know if it's possible to do with the clips on, I don't know, but we'll give it a go. So my estimation of what those little nylon screws were for was correct. They're used to align the top edge, which is the most critical edge because that's the finest pitch connectors, is to align that top edge for the LCD. Now turn on, you can see I've got my LCD back as it was. The backlight, I can hear it but I can't see it. We're back to square one, but we now know that we can get to that electroluminescent back panel, and someone has done a bit of work on this before. I wasn't completely going in blind, and as you can see they've taken one there and soldered it in, which is what we may have to do. But we now know that it's 88 by 87 millimeters square, so that's the good news. I've just received my electroluminescent display, which has been laminated. I'm not sure if it's going to be too thick to actually go behind the screen, but you can see it's roughly the right size. So we're going to take a look, see what we can do. It's got two chances. The great thing about YouTube videos is if this doesn't work, you're not going to see it. We don't want any negativity on my channel, but let's just see how we get on. Feeling the thickness of the existing pad on there, it's not too dissimilar to what we have, to be honest. Excuse the dogs, got noisy neighbours. I've peeled the tape off the sides of the existing EL display and it should just peel off, but it's hard to do with one hand, so I'll come back. So there we go, this one's just peeled off. Now we're not going to have the two gold tabs that are on there that it sits in this way around, so we're not going to have that. But it's amazing that the piece that I've got is almost the same size. And that's what we have here. There we go, you can see it's just, you know, centimetre wider. I'm just going to try and just transplant this straight on. The one issue is that this piece of heat shrink tubing pushed around this thing, the thickness of that heat shrink tubing is enough to push the display bezel away from the PCB. Also, the two contact areas here, which are the touch places for the EL display, are underneath the bezel, so you can't get to solder them once it's in place. I'm not quite sure how we get out. One of the contacts comes out to a pad, but the other is still hidden. It doesn't appear that the traces appear on this side at all. And also we've got the membrane pad tucked in as well, so it's a bit tricky to get at. Well, I've had to trim this display panel so that it fits inside the contact areas, because on the display you've got these contact pads, and it's got to sit inside those, which it does quite easily, but we need to make sure that it does. And also I've trimmed the wires off because otherwise they would stick out and be overhanging the button panel that's in here, so that's another issue that we have. So I've trimmed that back, and I'm hoping I can get to peel enough of that off so that I can solder onto there, and I'm going to solder onto there and then just link across to these two places. I'm just wondering if the backlight is polarized. It could well be. This is the output circuit for the backlight display, and I can see that this line here says VBAT negative, so I'm assuming that's going to be negative and this is going to be positive. I'm not quite sure. It would tend to tie up because this pin is actually brought out to a pad down here, and I don't think they'd take 100 volts around the board anywhere. This looks like a test point. So I've scratched on the display. You can just see that I've scratched under my thumb where it says plus and minus. Just the shadow of my thumb helps there. So I think that's the way it goes. Now I've taken my electroluminescent display that came in, and assuming that the colours are correct, it was wired this way around. So the right hand side is positive. Now I don't know which way up this panel goes. Which side is electroluminescent and which side isn't? Maybe both sides are, I don't know. I have no idea. Never had one before in my life, but I'm going to get the polarity correct. So the way that this sits in, I'm going to put it in here. I'm going to try it this way around first of all, because this offers me an insulating layer at the base here. And I'm going to put a little piece of tape on the board just to make sure that it's insulated off the PCB. I've cut this tab off because it sticks down too far, and I've cut back a bit of the display and scratched away at the other two sides of these metal strips, and I'm going to solder two wires onto here and then link them across to there. So that's the plan. We'll see how it goes. As you can see I've extended the wires just enough to reach those two pads. This is going to sit somewhere in that position like that, and I'll tape it in so we've just got enough wire just to link across to those 2 points. I'm going to try the display cover to see how that looks. Bezel, I should say. I do apologise for the strobing effect from my lighting. I managed to preserve some of the yellow tape that was holding the original electroluminescent panel on with, and just to anchor this piece in position. I hope it's the right side up. I've got no idea of knowing which way it is. I just got no idea. Could well be upside down. No, my luck, it's upside down. Anyway, I've cleaned up these edges. I'm going to check them with my loop just to make sure that there's no particles on there, and I will brush off these things here. I'm not going to put any solvent on them or anything, I'm just going to give them a light brush. There is an issue with these wires catching the underside of the bezel on this edge on here. It's just the other way up. Let me just turn it the right way up. It sits on this way around, so there's a bit of a lip here. This could be an issue, I don't know, but the force for the connectors is on the side, so it may not be a problem. Well, the display's in position. Just to note that these corner pieces here, these little nylon screws, are actually cams that adjust the position of the display left to right. I'm not happy with these wires here, they seem to be trapping the bezel and lifting it a bit on this corner. We may find that we're losing connection. That's not a good sign. I'm not quite sure, as you can see, if you look at it down there, they do cause an issue. So we're going to see if we can get away with that or not. We may have to do something to help that. I'm not sure if that interferes with the keypad. We may have to use something like K-wire or something, which I'm not keen on doing because it's obviously rigid. But anyway, let's see how we get on. So I'm still not sure if the electroluminescent display is okay, but you can see my LCD display is perfectly okay. Just as a note, when you're looking at the display, when you're taking it apart from the first time, just note the alignment between the display panel and the edge of the PCB, because those little cam points, if you remember where it is, it will be easier to reset it to that value. You know, you can't mark it because it's such a small, but I mean those tracks are so tiny.
I mean, they're literally, I don't know what the pitch is, but it's got to be like 1/4 of a mil or 1/2 a mil. I mean, there's thousands of them, but you can see we're okay in the line. And if I've put it out of my sunlight here, just to show that there's the backlight, so you can see we do have backlight. Okay, not quite sure if that's good enough, and it does go around. It's bigger than the original LCD display, but that's not a bad thing. I'd rather have that than no backlight. So at the moment it's all looking good.
Well, here you can see my display is back to normal, working as far as I can tell perfectly as a scope. And you can see if I go to the LCD and go backlight, we have got some backlight. Now, I'm not sure how brilliant that is compared to what it was originally. It looks maybe a tad dim. It could be the wrong way around inside, but I'm not taking it apart. I do have a backlight, so at the moment all's good.